Hi, this is Joyce, the voice of Joyce, and back for episode 12. And this is an unscripted interview with my grandson. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do, because I found out what does one 21-year-old think about. It's not politics, but it is inclusivity. He thinks about having everyone acknowledge the existence and see everyone around them as equal and the same. And I think that's a great goal as well, since we are one nation, as Eisenhower put it, united under God with liberty for all. And so because of that, and because it's almost Martin Luther King's birthday, it is appropriate that we remember that there is good in the diversity amongst us. It makes for a richer experience. So let me introduce you to my grandson, and he'll discuss how diversity and inclusiveness is important to him and why. This is Joyce, and I'm in my living room with my grandson, who's 21 years old, and we're going to speak about issues that concern him. Maybe politics, may not. It's really up to him as a 21-year-old to see what do 21-year-olds really think about. He's in his last year of pre-med here in the country at the university. So, Ilan, what do you think about? What is most important to you?
I guess I would say at this point, knowing it's my last year, it's probably getting a job and finding my next steps in my future career, my future aspirations.
And I know that you want to go on to med school, but research is going to come first.
Yeah, and that's because at this point I'll still have to take time to study for the MCATs for med school, but once I'm prepared for that and I can send in applications, I would hope to immediately go into medical school at that point.
I understand that you're not that interested in politics, even though you know that I am. So if you had to choose today, what kind of a person, you don't have to tell me the name of the person you would vote for, but what kind of person would you look for to run the country as president in the 2020 election?
Probably someone that's a little more diplomatic than what I've been seeing recently, someone who's been a little more willing to use their mouth rather than their fist to solve problems. One thing that I would also like is a little more inclusiveness, because a lot of my friends, for instance, do fall in the perspective of, or in the dimension of LGBTQ in that community. And I notice that especially with what's happened in recent events, there's been a lot of not only xenophobia, but also a lot of, I guess, aggression and malice towards that community. And I would want someone that's a little more appreciative of the differences that make up this country as a whole.
I agree with you. I mean, there's no question. We're both on the same page, because we've worked hard to have people with disabilities acknowledged and have a place in our society. To tear it down is a terrible tragedy, because as this country, we are a melting pot of over 165 different nationalities. And as you know, in New York City, crime is going down, and we all get along. We don't have riots, but unfortunately, anti-Semitism is up along with xenophobia, and other crimes I guess, of ideology or hatred. Do you think it's because they don't know? Do you think it's because people are not educated? You think they're just under their own stresses? Why do you think this is happening in society?
I think it can happen for a bunch of reasons for me. I think there is a large part that is not a lot of education, or not at least equal education. As we know, the difference in education, for instance, between New York, which is rather highly rated in education as one of the better states for that, versus Louisiana, which I believe is the worst. Yes, there's going to be quite a disparity in how much they know about a situation and how much they're kept up to date with. I mean, at this point, within the past few decades, there's been so much in a plethora of fields at this point that have changed drastically from what we used to know. And it's very hard to keep up with all that change in information. And I feel like not everyone has kept up with that wave, that new wave of information. And that does lead to a lot of bias. It's also, as we know, there's still plenty of bias based on religious beliefs, for instance. I mean, that's also played a huge role, in my opinion.
You think it's because people are perhaps more homogeneous in other parts of the nation than they are here, that they're just not exposed to the population and the variety of individuals that we have here?
To a degree, yes. I do feel that it does come down to what you're shown as far as how well you're going to adapt to a situation. I mean, we see it. I mean, naturally, my science background tells me that you can only adapt to what you've been presented with to a degree, and that our ability to understand multiple situations is better enhanced when we've been presented with those situations. If you've never had to deal with said situation before, you're not exactly going to be very prepared for it.
That's interesting. So it's really based on knowledge of who's part of your sphere. Who do you see every day? That's basically who you trust.
Well, to a degree, that's what helps you build your social bias. If all you see in your days are one group of people, it's very hard at that point to understand other groups. If all you're shown is one way, and are later in life when you've already developed your set of morals and values and you've been bent in one way, it's very hard to bend yourself in a different way by that point.
Being flexible, even, it seems to me, even if you want to be flexible, even if you want to change, is very difficult.
Sometimes it's not the easiest, and it really depends on how fixated it is on your morals. For instance, if you really have very strong morals and ethics that maybe you've grounded some of your beliefs in, and this goes against that, it's going to be very hard to change, because that's changing you as an individual so much from what you've known for so many years. And that can make it significantly harder for people to adapt to such a new change.
Then what would you think would be, since you're into experiments, what would be an experiment? Would we take people across the country who are different and, don't say anything about what their differences are, but just go to the local coffee shop and see if you say hi, will other people come over and say hi too? And then if you want to say anything further, you can, but kind of introduce different people to different areas of the country so that people understand it's all us, there is no them.
Yeah. The issue that I see in that is twofold. One, it almost seems like we're putting people on display, and that's the last thing I would want, because people are people and we'd want them to be equals, not someone that is presented more so as an anomaly to an area and be shown in such a light, because that already puts them at a negative disposition in that area. Two is it's all about change and the willingness to change. Some people are very much not willing to change. and are very much stuck in their ways. As such, showing them something new and saying this is the new way will not change their thoughts. The only way people will change is their willingness from themselves to want change and to see change as an advancement in their personal life, as something that benefits them and improves their value of life. I find it would be very hard to make a statement that showing someone a new way will automatically tell them that that's the way they should be, that this is great, this is what I should be thinking.
Right.
And most people, if you tell them this should be the way you think, they get very adverse to that idea.
That's right. You're not going to do it just automatically.
So for me, I feel that change is going to have to come from within, but I think also as a society, we're holding people more accountable now. And I think that's huge. At least in my generation, there's a lot more acceptance and understanding of the differences and that diversity. Social media is helping with that because now we're connected, not just geographically. We don't have to be within 10 miles of someone to know the person. They can be halfway across the world and we can understand them inside and out. We can talk with them now. We can understand other people's cultures because we have more access to knowledge. It's then also a question of how well do you use said knowledge and how trustworthy some of that knowledge is. But nonetheless, we have more access to information, and I think that's helped us as a generation be more accepting.
It helps you. Do you think then, since I am of the 2 generations removed, do you think it's possible for people of my generation to change? Well, we see a big spectrum in my generation also, because look who's running on the Democratic ticket. You've got from everyone from the extreme left to the center. So it runs the gamut of people.
And I think to a degree, I would say every generation will have a spectrum. It's all dimensional. It's very infrequently categorical. Where at this point, some people are going to be more adverse to change and some people are going to be more accepting. And that's going to be, so I wouldn't say that a generation could ever be a lost cause, but I can say that it's probably a lot harder for your generation at this point, having won so many years, decades of years ahead of us, so to speak, where you've had your beliefs stuck in one way. It's going to be very hard to see a change for people that are not very open to change.
Right.
And for us, we're still at an age that's very plastic in our thinking. And with more and more information, we're more readily able to change. And I think there's also this idea that our generation holds each other more accountable for the actions that we take.
And that's appropriate, because everyone should be accountable for the actions that they take and own up to their own responsibility for whatever interactions they have.
Yeah. And I feel that every generation is getting better with that, but nonetheless, that still means that, for instance, your generation might have a much harder time with change.
Well, do you think our future is bright?
I try to be optimistic.
I feel it's bright. I feel it's bright because we have young people who are very articulate, who are in their 20s and 30s, and we know that we have a society that is broken, and any broken society is an opportunity to be fixed. So, like I like to say, it's 2020 now, and we can see clearly. And by seeing clearly, perhaps we can make the world better. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for having listened. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. For me, it was a real treat because I kind of looked not through the camera, but looked into his eyes directly as I asked him these questions about what he perceived as important to him. And then, after we found out that it was about equality for all and understanding all of us in this nation, there was an interesting expose in one of the papers on American history books and how American history is taught differently in every state. And my thought was, if we all collaborated and came up with one book that everyone read throughout the country, that would really make most of us understand our history in the same way. If by regions you wanted to delineate what was different about your history in particular, well, that's great for analytical thought and discussion. But American history should be something that unites us and not divides us. And it wouldn't be bad to have civics courses as well. I had them when I was a young woman. I know, because I got a plaque for being a citizen, a good citizen. So, never too late to do what's right. We've done the same thing for many, many years, I understand. Now it's time in 2020 to see more clearly. So, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye now, and have a great day.